Hi guys, my name is Chloe, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 reads of 2023. Now, it's been a bit of a long time since I have been filming, so hopefully this video won't be too bumbly, and yeah, it's just been for no reason in particular. I just fell out of the habit of filming, and then when I'd missed several unboxings and wrap-ups to post, I just figured I'd take a step away from YouTube until the new year. So this is going to be my first video of 2024, and then hopefully from here on out I will be able to go back to weekly uploads, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm so excited to share my top 10 books from 2023 with you. I read so many great books throughout the year, and quite a lot of 4 and 5 star reads as well. They were the majority of the books that I read, which was really great. So anyway, let's jump into this so that this video isn't too long, and yeah, let's go with my 10th favourite book of the year. And this one is going to be Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Dark Artificer series, which I have owned since they first came out, and I finally got around to reading them last year. So yay. Can't believe I waited that long because this series is absolutely amazing. I gave this one 5 stars, book 3 5 stars, and then the middle one I gave 4 stars to, but overall a really great series. And this is the only Cassandra Clare book on this list, but this year I did read so many great books by Cassandra Clare. This series, the Chain of Gold series as well, and I also read Swordcatcher, which is her first adult fantasy books. All of those were really great, but I had to choose this one because there's something that happened in this book and it's stuck with me ever since it happened. I can't say what it is, but I couldn't believe it, and it involved a character that had become one of my favourite characters, and then things happened. So yeah, in this one we are following Emma Carstairs in Los Angeles, and she is living with the Blackthorns, and yeah, things just start going wrong from there. You'll have to bear with me with the lighting. The sun might be setting, but I need to get this video filmed. But yeah, I loved getting introduced to a new cast of characters. I loved all of them. I think Ty especially was my favourite, and also I loved Malcolm as well in this book. He was great too. And yeah, I think we got to see some returning characters. We usually do in a Cassandra Clare book, but I don't remember if it happened in this one, but that's always great. And yeah, I just had a really great time reading this book, and so this had to make it onto the list. The next book is a thriller slash mystery thriller, and this is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. Now, I actually listened to this one on audio because the audiobook was available for free on YouTube. I don't know if it still is or not, and I enjoyed it so much that I wanted a physical copy, so I since purchased a hardback. But yeah, this book was really great. Of course, I loved it. It's heavily inspired by And Then There Were None, which is my favourite Agatha Christie book of all time. I haven't read all of them, but of the ones I've read, that's my favourite. And on this one we are following Daisy and her family as they gather on a remote island to celebrate her grandma or Nan's 80th birthday. And then on that night, the tide's coming in, so they're all stranded on the island, and then the Nan ends up dead. And other deaths happen after that, and they need to sort of work out what's going on, why someone's trying to kill them, and things like that. I really loved the atmosphere in this book about them being stranded on this island. It was very creepy and dark in places, and I really liked the way that the killer chose to communicate with the family. They did this through a series of poems, a bit like in the original book, but also through family tapes as well, which was really interesting. And I just loved finding out all of these family secrets at the same time they did, and just reveal after reveal after reveal. It was great. And what made this book even better was the ending. It was absolutely shocking, and it was an ending that I didn't really expect for the thriller genre. I can't say any more, but I am interested at going back and rereading this book at some point, just so that I can see how everything sort of leads up to the end. I think that would be really interesting. The next book on this list, book number 8, is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I did read this one on Kindle, so I don't have a physical copy here with me. This is the first Riley Sager book that I've read, and I absolutely loved it. I especially loved the dark, creepy, horror-y nature of the book. That was amazing. But anyway, in this book we are following Maggie, and 25 years ago her and her parents fled, I think it's Bainbury House, in the middle of the night after living there for just a few weeks, and nobody knows why, nobody knows what happens. So we are following Maggie in present day, where she has inherited the house again and she hasn't been back since, but she wants to go back and renovate it so she can sell it on because she doesn't want anything to do with this house. What I found really interesting about this book was the dual POV that we got to follow. So initially we have Maggie's POV, which is just what's going on day to day, but every other chapter we also get a chapter from her dad's book that he published, which is called House of Horrors. So we're also learning about what happened back then, but also not everything's true because he wrote it to make things up and make money, but also some things were true. So yeah, you sort of get to work out what happened to the family all those years ago at the same time as Maggie does. And yeah, it's just really, really creepy. I was reading this one at night sometimes and some of the scenes were particularly creepy. I wouldn't say it's a pure horror book, but as someone who doesn't read horror, I found it quite creepy. And yeah, I will definitely be reading more from Riley Sager in the future because I love this one. And yeah, I would highly recommend it if you haven't read a horror book before, but you love thrillers and you can sort of like dip your toes into the genre a bit. Book 7 on this list doesn't really need an introduction whatsoever, and this is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I jumped on the hype train when this came out and I absolutely loved this book. I got through this so quickly. I did listen to this one on audio whilst I was doing some puzzling, and I got through quite a few puzzles listening to this audiobook. It is quite long, and yeah, I just had the best time reading this book. It was so nice and easy to read. I absolutely loved it. I'm not going to say too much about the plot of Fourth Wing because I know it has been everywhere recently, especially with Iron Flame coming out, but we do follow Violet as she is sent to train as a dragon rider, even though she wanted to be a scribe, but her mother refuses to let her do that. And so she goes to this academy where she ends up meeting Xaden, who is one of the wing leaders. And yeah, is it enemies to lovers, slow burn romance in a way, but with dragons. And the dragons are like the best part about this book. They're my absolute favourite. I love how sassy they are when they're communicating between themselves and between their dragon riders. That's like one of the best bits to read. But I also really like the trials aspect about this book. So in order to become a dragon rider you have to complete a series of trials, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Divergent in places, but yeah, definitely more fantasy based. And yeah, I did really like the characters as well, and the romance I thought was pretty good so far. Unfortunately though, I have started Iron Flame and it has taken me a very long time to get through it, and I might have to like put it down and come back to it, so that's kind of disappointing. But on its own, Fourth Wing, absolutely incredible, and I would definitely recommend it if you are looking for a new fantasy romance to pick up. Book number 6 was an anticipated sequel for me, and this was Foxglove by Adeline Grace. This is the sequel to Belladonna, which was on my top 10 books from the previous year, and yeah, I absolutely loved Belladonna and I loved Foxglove as well. Whilst they were both 5-star reads, this one isn't quite as good as the original for me, but I was very, very pleased with it and I had a great time reading this book. I can't say too much, but in this one we do get to follow Death and Signet again as they encounter a new supernatural enemy, and we also get introduced to new places and new characters, which was really, really great. I really loved the atmosphere in this book, so it was one of the highlights of Belladonna, how dark and creepy it is and all of the ghosts. It wasn't quite as good as book 1. I'd say book 1 is ever so slightly darker, but this is great nonetheless. I really liked that this book was dual POV. I won't say who the other POV is, just in case you get spoilers for the first book, but there is another character that we follow alongside Signa, and you get to see chapters from both of them, which I really, really enjoyed. And yeah, I loved the new characters, as I already mentioned, and the ending has just made me super, super excited for the third book. I can't wait to see what's going to happen there. Yeah, unfortunately, a bit of a wait to go, but yeah, I can't wait. Book 5 on this list is another fantasy romance, and this is This Vicious Grace by Emily Fidey. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. I had a great time reading this book, and it was just different to some of the other fantasy romances that I've read before. So in this one we are following Alessa, who is the Fenestra, and she needs to find a Fonte so that she can harness her magical powers to destroy the swarm of demons that's going to take over the island. But there is a catch. She's killed every single Fonte that she's tried to marry before because her touch is deadly. So there's a bit of an issue there. Her citizens of the island are starting to lose faith in her because she just keeps killing her suitors. And so after an assassination attempt takes place, she hires a bodyguard called Dante, and so she enlists his help to sort of help with just the whole scenario overall, to protect her life while she finds a Fonte. And yeah, the demons are coming, so she needs to do that quickly. So that's sort of like the main premise of this book. What I did really like about this book was the setting. I really liked how summery it felt. It was set on an island. There were lots of lemons in this book. I think the author said this book was heavily inspired by Italy, if I remember correctly. So like the whole atmosphere and setting was just completely different to any fantasy romance that I'd read before. I really enjoyed Alessa's narration, especially at the beginning. She was so just sassy and snarky about the whole situation, even though she was having to attend funeral after funeral. She was just so fed up and done with, and I really enjoyed that take on the story. And it was really great that the Fontes could be any gender, which was really interesting. You don't often see that in fantasy romances, so yeah, she could have anyone she wanted. And then I really enjoyed the romance in this one. It was very reminiscent of Hawk and Poppy from Blood and Ash, and I just really enjoyed that. And yeah, I'm super excited for the sequel. I think it is only a duology as well, so I'll be able to finish the series out next year. The fourth book on my list is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, and really just this whole trilogy itself. I read all of these books in December, so it's kind of hard to separate them, but I'm just putting the first book here for now. So this is like an adjacent series to Caraval, which I also read this year and unfortunately was very disappointed by, but I absolutely loved this trilogy. So if you didn't quite enjoy Caraval and you're willing to give this author another go, definitely pick up this book. It's not completely different, but different enough, and you've got a whole new cast of characters, a new setting, well, apart from Jax, and let's be honest, he is the highlight of this book. He's honestly the reason why I loved it so much. He's such an interesting villainous slash grey morality sort of character in a way. I mean, he's awful, but also we love him anyway. But yeah, in this one we are following Evangeline, and she runs to the Prince of Hearts to make a bargain with him because her one true love is getting married and she'd rather that not happen. So she makes a deal with the Prince of Hearts, and she promises free kisses to him in exchange for stopping this wedding. But little does she know that he has an agenda of his own and his own reasons for wanting to make this bargain with her. So yeah, this book is set in the north, and this whole world is a bit more magical and fairy tale-esque compared to Caraval, which was definitely more like circus based, I'd say. And yeah, my favourite part of this book was definitely Jax. He made me laugh, he made me cry. I just enjoyed every single scene that he was in. He was absolutely fantastic. And as I said, magical setting, I loved it. And these books I found, whilst they were still flowery in terms of their description, it wasn't quite as much as the Caraval series. So I did find them a lot easier to digest and read, which was also another bonus. And yeah, I loved the slow burn romance in this. It was absolutely great. And to be honest, I wish there were more books than just the trilogy, because I need more from both of these characters in this world. I hope we get another series at some point. The third book on this list is Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. This is a standalone novel by Olivia Blake, and I absolutely loved this book. I don't really remember too much of what happened, but the characters in this are amazing, and this book is definitely more character driven anyway and not so much plot based. But yeah, the main premise of this book is that we are following Viola, and she needs to sell this house, but unfortunately is haunted by a very stubborn ghost who refuses to leave. And so she ends up asking for help from Fox, who just happens to be the godson of Death himself anyway. And we also meet other characters along the way. And yeah, this book, yeah, The characters in this book are great. I love how they all interact. They make me laugh. And yeah, whilst I don't quite understand what happened in this book, it's one of those books, like, for me, it was kind of like when I read Gideon the Ninth. I didn't 100% understand what was going on, but I was enjoying it and I didn't mind being a little bit confused. That's what reading this book was like. So I imagine if I read it again, I would get even more out of this book. But yeah, I just had a great time reading this. My favourite character had to be Death. I loved his interactions with Fox. They just made me laugh out loud and it was so funny. But yeah, overall just a fantastic book, and I'd recommend it if you just want a, well, not a quick and easy standalone, but like a standalone fantasy that you can sink your teeth into. We are down to the final 2 books on this list, and I will say these 2 books aren't quite set in their place. Depending on the day, they do swap round, but I have put them in a place for a reason, and I'll explain why. But the second book on this list has to be A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This was my first read of 2023, and I'm so glad it's made it onto this list and is as high as it is. I had such a great time reading this book and I didn't want to put it down at all. I got through it so quickly. I was there for every reveal, every twist and turn, and it was incredible. The series as a whole is amazing, but I definitely think the first book is the best. But yeah, in this book we are following Pip, who is investigating a murder that happened 5 years ago, I think, and this was when Andy, a girl in her village, was murdered by a boy named Sal. Everyone knows that, everyone believes that, everyone apart from Pip. And so as part of a school project, she decides to look into the past and investigate the murder case again. And in doing so, she starts to reveal new information about the murder case, and she doesn't believe that Sal actually committed the murder, and so she wants to prove his innocence. That's basically what this book is about. Like I said, I couldn't put it down. This book is also quite creepy in places for a YA. I was reading this at night again, and some of the scenes were a little bit on the creepy side. Not as much as Home Before Dark, but yeah, it still had its places. So yeah, if you're looking for a thriller to read, I would highly recommend A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and don't be put off by the fact that it's YA, because this is one of my favourite thrillers of all time, if not my favourite. So yeah, looking forward to reading Holly Jackson's standalone novels next year, because I still haven't read 5 Survive and there's a new one coming out, so I need to get onto those. And so we come down to my favourite book of 2023, and that is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. I just had the best time reading this book. This one beat A Good Girl's Guide to Murder just because it got some physical reactions out of me. I was laughing so much out loud throughout this book, and I just had the best time reading it, and that's why I must put it slightly above. But like I say, they do interchange, it's not like in place. But yeah, I'm choosing this book as my favourite read from 2023. This is a cozy sci-fi fantasy book. It's a cozy sci-fi thing. I don't know, I don't read many sci-fis, but I know this was on the sci-fi list on Goodreads. But yeah, in this one we are following an android inventor, Giovanni, who lives out in the forest away from society, and one day he takes it upon himself to look after a human baby. And then in this book we are following that baby all grown up as a young adult, where he's made some friends of his own, and these are Nurse Ratched, a sadistic nursing machine, and Rambo, a vacuum cleaner who just wants to clean and tidy. And these are his friends, and everything is lovely and amazing until one day they stumble across an android when they're out looking for parts, and everything starts to fall apart from there. That's all I will say from this book. Again, I feel like this book is very character driven, and that's why I loved it so much. Quite a bit does happen in this book, but you'll enjoy it so much more if you fall in love with these characters. And whilst this book was quite chunky, it didn't feel as long as it was, and I'm gutted that this is a standalone because I want more from Vic and Rambo and Nurse Ratched and just following them as they settle down and live their lives, I think. And to be fair, The House in the Cerulean Sea has a sequel coming out, even though I think that one was meant to be a standalone, so keeping my fingers crossed. But yeah, this one was, yeah, just such a lovely read, and yeah, the romance was sweet as well and the characters were hilarious, so I would definitely recommend it, and it's definitely my favourite TJ Klune book that I've read so far. So that was it. Those were my top 10 books that I read in 2023. I would love to know what your favourite book of the year was. Let me know in the comments down below. But as always, I hope you're enjoying your current read, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!